headlines. It should have been the last time. All your torches would tear up my two heads, pulling up my two reds. It hurts to be the last friend. Red violet blue, I fell under you. It should have been the last time. It should have been the last time. Red, violet, blue, I felt you sink on through. And it should have been the last time. It should have been the last time. Holy water, filling up your top floor. All you wanted was a love moan. It's gonna be a cold one. We don't bother for tying up our loose ends, for holding what we hate. Yeah, it hurts to be the last friend. Red violet blue, I fell under you. It should have been the last time. It should have been the last time. Red violet blue, I felt you sink on through. And it should have been the last time. It should have been the last time. I let you sink on through. I felt you sink on through. Should have been the last time. Should have been the last time. Should have been the last time.
Hello, good evening to everyone. Good evening to all our viewers tonight. Good evening to my co-host, very special
Hello.
co-host tonight.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. It's Friday again. And once again, we are your 8 o'clock habit for now on Friday. So welcome to NCC Peptalk Season 4, Episode 2. And tonight will be a very interesting discussion with an old friend. Who's known just as much about Philippine cheerleading as we know ourselves. So she's
Yep.
been with us since the start. So it's going to be an interesting discussion. A lot of stories, a lot of fun, and also about the ICU. So before anything else, I will let my co-hosts say good evening to everyone.
Hello. Good evening, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy Sweldo Friday. Yes.
The Friday.
Para sa ating mga empleyado. Happy Sweldo Friday to everybody. Of course, you have Coach Anya with you tonight. And ay, nakamute si Coach Evan.
Oh, nakamute siya. Medyo late.
Coach, nakamute ka. Take two. Ayan.
Take two. I'm just practicing my yung muscle stretch. Hey guys, it's Coach Evan here, and welcome to the second episode of the season. I hope everyone is easing into the year smoothly. I don't know about you, but I feel great about 2021. And I think great things are bound to happen to us this year, honestly.
I think so too. Good. Well, let's start it off with some cheer news. Again, there's nothing going on in the world of sports really in terms of cheer, except that there are competitions in the United States for cheer, and like we said last what was that, December, Taiwan had their nationals. They were able to put up their nationals, so that's a good thing. Congratulations to Kevin Chang and the Chinese Taipei Cheer Association for doing that. I think Thailand has also news. They will be putting out cheer as part of the some Olympic event. I'm not sure. I can get the
Wow.
so they're active. They're moving. There are a lot of plans for this year for certain countries, and hindi tayo magpapatalo
Of
dyan.
course.
Diba? So we're
Competitive ang mga Pinoy eh.
we're cooking up something we can't yet announce unless it's final. But as always, the NCC and your PCA always active, always trying to figure out how to still keep our community together
Yeah.
in many different ways. And I think we're going to do it. We're going to do it this year. It's an exciting, maybe on one level, groundbreaking. And it's going to be fun for everybody.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure
abangan,
all of our
abangan
yeah,
nyo
I'm,
yan. Yeah.
I'm sure all of our cheerleaders and dancers watching from home talagang medyo kating-kating na rin to
Oo.
to compete. I mean, I feel like at some point medyo the daily, or I don't know how frequent yung online training ng mga teams, 'di ba? Parang it kind of gets nakakasuya
Yes.
for
Yes.
some.
Yes.
We get you. We don't blame you at all if you feel that way. Dahil nga, we're all stuck at home. But syempre, we do what we can. But still, syempre here at the NCC, our goal really is to provide a platform for you guys to showcase your talent. And it doesn't stop with this pandemic. So we're like, sabi nga ni boss, it's going to be hopefully groundbreaking. So we're excited to share with you developments on that soon.
Yeah,
Soon.
and then also news about the Worlds. We just got word that the Worlds is already officially canceled for April. So they're trying to move it, I think, about September. But still, things are still up in the air because the U.S. is going through a roller coaster right now.
Yeah.
So we have to wait for that, and of course, they're the leader in this in the sport. So
Yeah.
we have to look at them for guidance, but they're still trying. Like everything, we keep in close contact with them, and of course, our special guest will give us some more insight into that and how things are done. So ask your questions. Don't be shy. She's here to answer them. And if there's anybody that's an insider in the ICU, it's this woman. Uh,
Yes.
so I'm going to try to embarrass her this whole show so that she answers all the questions. But I love her. She's great. She's always been a supporter of Philippine cheer. So before we move on, also all the news came out. Also, Tokyo Olympics might be actually not pushing through.
No.
Yeah. So there are different people in Japan who have come out saying that they don't think it should push through. The preparations, they're not ready. And I think it has everything to do, obviously, with the uncertainty about this whole thing.
Yeah.
Was
Um,
there any news regarding if it's gonna be postponed to next year, or are they canceling this year and it's another 4 years or to the
because
next?
yeah, because they already canceled 2020, right? So they already canceled the Olympics in 2020. Oh, there you are, Ans.
Hello. No, my dog kasi is trying to play fetch. So pinupulot ko yung toy. Ang hirap
Dim
ng
sum.
buhay.
So there she goes again. So
Yeah.
so they postponed it already 1 year, and I
Yeah.
think it cost them a couple of billions of dollars just to postpone it and reschedule because you have to sort of
Yeah.
recommit those all the suppliers and everything that you already had in line. But I think if they postpone it this year, it's done. I don't think they'll push through with it and then wait na lang till 2024
Yeah.
Right.
for the next game. So we have,
So sad, though.
yeah, I think the only time it was postponed was World War II. I'm not sure, but I think we can research that online. But the only other time the Olympics was postponed was because of World War II for obvious reasons, right?
Yeah.
But everything else, every other year, now it's postponed again.
Yeah.
But we don't know. It's just that the news coming out from various sources and statements by certain Japanese political leaders that they're not sure. When they say they're not sure, and you know how Japan is legendary for their preparation, and if they say they're not sure that it's going to push through, then that's something already.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of dependencies and a lot of things that will happen when a big event like that is postponed. A lot of the schedules are put in limbo. The
Yeah.
suppliers are on limbo, and I can understand in a micro scale with the NCC. When we cancel an event, sunod-sunod yan. That means the suppliers, the everything, the
Yeah.
security, the venue, all of those. And can you imagine an Olympic event? So
Yeah. And I think it's
that
ano rin, it's a shame for the athletes,
Yeah.
parang eh,
They're at the top of my mind.
ibang level yung Olympics 'di ba? Parang ibang
yeah.
you train for the for
And
the
they never
biggest
they never
competition of your life.
they never stop training. I do know that the Olympic athletes who were gonna go, even if everyone was, staying away from everything because it's
Yeah.
COVID, they still continued to train because they were preparing for the Olympics. But
And
now,
then
Yeah.
yeah, and then this year is also for us the SEA Games. The Southeast Asian Games are 2021 because SEA Games is every 2 years.
Right. Yes.
And Vietnam is supposed to host. So these athletes, our athletes, are already going into they call a bubble to train for the Southeast Asian Games. I don't even think they're aspiring for Olympics, except maybe Carlos Yulo, number one gymnast in the world, right?
Mm.
But it's only him. So that's it. We'll see. A lot of uncertainty. And then the ICU also said that it might be a virtual competition because which you understand very well, right? Because
Yeah.
travel is going to be up in the air.
Yeah, especially now with the new UK strain.
Yeah,
It's going to be very difficult to travel, I think.
yeah,
And it's
because yeah,
scarier.
the fear is again heightened when you say something like that. So people are now second guessing again. So
Yes.
so let's see how things are. Wait, before we continue with ito si Nathan Razonable, pa-shout out po.
Hi,
Hi Nathan.
Nathan. Thank you for watching. Invite
Yeah,
your
he's
friends
the
to
first.
watch then.
He's the first commenter tonight.
right, yeah,
Okay, so Anya, we can go with your and then we bring our guest in, right?
Yes. We have Evan's video of the week. The one you shared before. May
Oh,
sinend
all
siyang,
right.
yung
Hi.
sinend
wait,
mo na
where is it?
video. Sige.
Yeah, wait.
While
Let me.
you're looking for it, boss, I'll
Yeah,
talk about
I'll
my
flag it up.
recommends.
Yeah.
So for this week, my recommends is what we call honey crisp double R. So it's
Yeah.
almond and parmesan na crisp. And as you can see, tinry ko yung very best ko na wag siyang ubusin para lang umabot this Friday. Ang hirap. And it's from SNR. I think may logo ng SNR eh. So I think they really produce this. So it says here, crisp caramel thins with slivers of almonds covered with parmesan. Hindi pala siya honey, boss. Akala ko kanina sabi ko honey, di ba? Ano pala siya? Caramel. So, ganyan lang siya. Oh my
Oh
gosh,
my
look at that
god.
texture. And then it's so thin. Tapos when you bite into it,
Mm.
It's like that. It reminds me of that dessert sa province. It's not almonds, but it's
Yeah,
bigger na
right,
with super solid sugar.
right,
What's
right.
that called? I know our viewers know what I'm talking about. They
What
said it's
what
yeah.
what
naka-plastic lang siya.
province?
Ah, my God. It's nuts. Talagang nuts. Ganyan kakapal. This looks more premium and looks really good. Something I would snack on. Pero yung province, guys, so viewers who are watching me, kung alam niyo yung nuts na sinasabi
Yeah,
ko,
let us know.
ano yun?
Yeah.
Nakalimutan ko yung tawag doon.
But this one is good kasi it's the texture is really nice. And it's a good mix of salty and sweet kasi for the parmesan, and then you have caramel. And then of course, yung almond, good for you. So, I'm just making excuses for myself, but yeah, it's good.
It's good. It sounds good, and I hate you for eating it in front of us. So, oh, Evan, I found your video of the week. So,
Yes.
Anya, again, final name and recommends.
So it's called Honey Crisp. You can find it in SNR. I'm just not sure of the price though. Kasi parang di siya, inaano nila. My mother-in-law just bought this when she went out. It's my new discovery. But yun, if you have SNR membership, or if you know somebody na may SNR membership, pwede ka naman sumama sa kanya as a guest. Or magpabili na lang sa kanya.
Actually,
Yeah.
if our guest has it, she bakes her own bread.
Wow.
Yeah, our guest
I wish-
bakes her own bread, and she shows it on her Instagram and her so we'll ask her about it later.
I
But
found
now,
the
Evan,
The
go.
local version of what Coach Annie was showing is called panutsa.
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 Panutsa. So,
Yeah.
so it's a street food, or it's pasalubong. It's usually pasalubong when you come from the province.
Mm.
It's okay. It's good. It's good naman. It's good.
But
Pero
it's very sweet. But it's very
Ah,
sweet.
but
Yeah,
if you're
I-
telling me almonds and caramel,
Right.
Yeah,
I
I know what
the-
you mean na nung ginugol ko siya. Parang they
Yes.
those nuts nga
Bilog.
covered in caramel.
Yes,
Tapos
and they're super
naka-cling film.
Yes, tama. Exactly.
Yeah. Parang mas malaking peanut brittle.
Mm.
Right.
I mean-
Peanut brittle.
Kasi yung
That's
peanut
right.
brittle, di ba sa Baguio, parang it's smaller. And then
Yes.
with the... Pero ito kasi is in buong peanuts. Ginugol ko talaga. Sabi ko, oh my God, yung pala yung tawag doon. Pero peanut brittle din yung lumalabas when you Google. Pero
Oh, before we go to Evan's video of the week, say hi to RG de Los Angeles. She's the father of Allison de Los Angeles.
Hello, sir.
Hi, sir. Good evening. Happy Friday.
Good
Thank you for
evening.
tuning in. I hope you're watching with the whole fam. Wow.
Yeah, see, Allison just graduated last year, and she was going to join NCC. Imagine. And then her only time to join NCC, and it was canceled. Can you imagine that? But
Don't worry,
Oh, well.
Alison. There will be other chances.
there will be,
Yeah.
We will make it happen.
we will
Yes.
make it happen. Correct.
And then,
Speaking of, I'll go.
no, I just, no, before we get to Bev, we have nga the video of the week from Coach
Yes.
Evan. And the Pep Warp Challenge that we are challenging all
Yes.
cheerleaders to
Right.
do.
So una yung video of the week. Speaking of making it happen, right? This
Yes.
this is our video of the week.
Featured
I want-
video of the week from
Featured-
our kababayan.
Let's see, tama ba yung i-share ko? Baka mali.
Check muna natin. Ito na naman tayo eh.
Practicing tayo. Oh, di ba? Oh, damn.
What's going on?
Nasa mall ka, by the way. Nasa mall ka.
I know, right?
National
Damn, that dismount though.
University Spirit Philippines. From Asia's southern east, Philippines.
May running mount pa siya.
World class talent, say it loud and proud. Philippines represent.
Secure yung white team na yan, di ba?
Oh, oh.
Tatang sa pala.
Gusto ko yung may dismount pero nag-iiba yung base na sumasalo.
So, illegal.
Oh, may pink costume.
Sumasayaw sa stand.
National University.
Ang galing,
I love-
ang galing
I
ng
love the
coach.
energy. I love the creativity. Super galing.
Ganun I think pag nabobore na yung cheerleaders at home, ang dami nilang nagagawang mga ganyan.
Oh
I think
my God.
this guy is like a super fan. Because the attention to detail on certain things, kuha niya eh. But because of his fandom on cheer, no? Now, people are a fan of this guy for creating
Yeah.
something like this.
Kasi ang galing ang galing pa nung tawan-tawa nga ako yung may pag-dismount, pero nag-iiba yung base, umiikot-ikot
Pag-ilipat.
pa. Parang
Ay,
gusto kong panood sa mga judges natin and then let's see anong score.
I'm still in shock. I don't understand what I just saw. Seriously.
Yeah, maybe our guest will also have comments on that routine.
It's
But
great.
speaking of being bored at home, if you have have time on your hands, more
Yes.
time on your hands after school, after training, after work, we're encouraging you guys to do ang sinasabi ni Coach Evan, the Pep Warp Challenge on TikTok. So I tried it. I tried to do something, I guess, a bit more difficult, but dahil hindi na
Oh, Mickey, you're so fine, you blow my mind. Hey, Mickey. Hey, Mickey. Oh, Mickey, you're so fine.
yon. So,
Very good.
if you can, I'm sure you guys can do better than that. So please, you can post it on your TikTok, or you can just send us the video of the Pep Warp challenge, and then we'll show all of your videos next Friday on Peptalk.
Right. Great. So, without further ado, let us bring in our special guest for tonight. You know, she, like I said, she's been a good friend to the Philippines. She's been part of cheer since I guess we started cheerleading, and even before that, and building. She helped actually kickstart Malaysia's cheer organization, the Cheerleading and Register of Malaysia, CHARM. So she was the pioneer in those things. She was also the first Malaysian to judge the ICU in the ICU worlds. And she's been to the Philippines several times, judging all our competitions na ata eh. UAAP,
A familiar
NCAA,
face.
NCC. She's a familiar face and a good friend. Without further ado, please welcome to the Philippines, first time guesting on Pep Talk Season 4, Episode 2, our good friend, Beverley Hon.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hi, Bev. How are you?
Hi. Good. It's just been, it's the whole, Malaysia just went into lockdown again this week.
Wow.
So it's kind of just trying to, sort out things. Kids, they're supposed to start school next week. So the good thing is I don't have to go out and buy school uniforms for a while. I don't have to do a lot of things, but a lot of things are online. So I'm also the parent representative for my son's class, which means any updates from the school, I need to keep the rest of the parents of his classmates informed. So that's been keeping me busy, like trying to make sure everyone knows what's going on. Got to make sure I know what's going on.
Right.
Also, next week is supposed to be the World Youth Scrabble Championship, the West Player Youth
Scrabble,
Cup.
Scrabble.
My son is a Scrabble
Yeah.
player, so this past week has been kind of selections from Malaysia, and they're playing online,
Nice.
but it's still, you have to keep track of it, and then when he's done, and then he comes and analyzes it. You obviously know some people are not playing according to rule. They're doing things they should not be doing, because we're like, no, pretty sure you don't know that word.
Yeah.
Things like that. So that's where it's the whole week's been busy of just trying to keep track of everything. So it's kind of a busy start to the new year, but in a way it's good, because it's better
good.
than sitting bored and wondering if what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah. Well, we were lucky to be able to have you here on the show despite your busy schedule, making it even
he
busier.
just would kill me if I didn't make time. So I was given fair warning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, wait,
the
wait, wait.
embarrassment.
Yeah, so let's start off with you've been you were like known as Charm. You were Miss Charm.
I don't know if you want to say it that way, but
No, I know, but you kickstarted the whole. Can you tell us how it started, Malaysian Cheer?
okay. Let's history trip. Back in time. It's not Thursday, but yeah, throwback. Okay. So what happened was, I think somewhere in the 70s, somewhere along the lines of, I think maybe 74, 73 to 75, in between that time, my school decided that let there be cheerleaders. According to my former boss at the newspaper, the editor who hired me, so she was basically a senior from my high school, and she said that one day, she thought, why don't we have this? Why doesn't the school have cheerleaders for sports day? And she brought it up, and they agreed to it, and that's how it kind of got started. It's debatable exactly which school started, because they all kind of started on the same time. So who really sparked off we still don't know. Everyone claims to be the first. But that kind of just was a very simple version. And then, over the years, they just had them cheering, like during sports day, sideline cheering. And then eventually they took center stage, but cheering during sports day. That was the big thing. There was no sideline cheering at outside events. Very, very, there were few opportunities. And honestly, this how it happens over here, how cheer is over here, is it's more of its own thing than it is a sideline support system.
Right.
So basically, with so now it's telling my age, isn't it? So in the 90s, when I was in high school, okay. So basically, I started in 1990. Okay, and that's when you go to high school, there are 5 years of high school. So there's Form 1 to 5. You're not allowed to join in Form 1 and 2. You can only join cheerleading in Form 3 onwards. And basically how it worked was you go for auditions. The houses, when they start the houses, then they start telling you, okay, the sports season has opened. We're going to have auditions at this date. And then you show up and you try to impress them and do whatever you can. What happened for me was I tried out, and I think then there was a lot of they pick their own friends, and you don't know who you're going to put back in the team. It wasn't as there wasn't the technique or the kind of framework that we have now of cheer as a sport. It really was like, if you look at pictures from the 70s and 80s and especially in the 80s, with people doing whatever they did, and it was really random. And I think you guys would, if you know your cheer history in Philippines, you guys had the cheer competition with Johnson and Johnson sponsored.
Yeah.
It was random, really random. It kind of was like that. So that was kind of how it was for us when, you could have all kinds of strange props. You could dress any way you wanted. You could do all kinds of things. We attempted all kinds of really horrible things and hurt ourselves, but, we just rolled with the punches and still did stuff. That's how it all started everywhere. Those who had a more formal start with, help from the ICU, I think they're really lucky in that sense, because they've had proper guidance and they're going to take off really fast, as opposed to all of us who fumbled and bumbled our way through the 80s and 90s. So basically what happened was I auditioned, I didn't get it. And then there's then they realized I could do gymnastics. And then suddenly they're like, oh, but there's this other girl, a friend of theirs, who wanted to come back in the team as well. And she was in the team for a couple of years, I think. And they're like, we need to hold auditions again. So I got in the second time. Okay. And a friend of mine who got in the first time, she didn't get in after that. And she never lets me forget it. Whenever she sees me, she's like, you would have got me kicked out. I'm like, you couldn't do shit. I love Claire.
I think that would have to be the last for now, at least on the show.
But okay, I'll keep it clean. But basically, I was like, look, I had skills, you had none. Let's put it that way. So she lives with that now. But she had her chance when she went to study in the US, and she got into a team there, so she can't complain. It's not like she never fulfilled her dream to become a cheerleader.
Yeah, it's not just right here.
Yeah. So for me, I never really stopped. I continued after I left school, and then I went back and I would help, go check them out, help the team out, and then eventually in college I started working at the same time, and then I began working in the newspaper, and that's where one of the first questions when they met me, they're like, "What do young people like to do?" I'm like. And I basically just said whatever I like doing. And I was like, well, there's TV commercials, like modeling and cheerleading. And then they wanted to know more. And the sample piece I'd written actually of my writing was on cheerleading. And that's where the editor who hired me, she was like, do you think there's, a market for this? And I said, well, considering that every school brags they're better than the other school, I would say if we had a competition, they would really have to show who's really the best.
Right.
And that's how it got started. That was in about 96, 97. And then eventually, 96, I think, I went in full time in 97. And that's where I had the unenviable task of trying to make it happen.
Wow.
As a project for the paper. It was difficult because people thought we were joking. We it's kind of like we had doors slammed in our faces. People were going like, cheerleaders, there's no such thing as cheer in Asia. I'm like, what am I?
So what are you?
Yeah, but they found it really hard to believe, and they're like, we've never heard of it, we've never seen it, and to convince people to come on board as sponsors, no one wanted to pick it up. And then we got lucky because I think early 99, that's where Johnson and Johnson were like, hey, we're doing this in the Philippines as well, so yeah, we can come in over here. And that's how it got started, and we talked about things, and eventually I think it was in 97 that's when the internet began. That's when internet was like dial-up, but that was the first time internet began.
Yeah,
And
I think
I
that's when
used
Google started.
I used the office computer to like send a little, alert out in the
Dial,
world like we need help.
dial
And
up, dial up.
it was, that we that
Yeah.
and what happened was someone from the British Cheerleading Association, Bob Curelfi, he responded and he was like, we could help you out. We can send you kind of like the rules we have, how we do things over here, because we've done it for a while. And I was like, great. And it kind of coincided with a trip that I had. I think that was also in '97. I ended up going to London for work. I was there for the X-Files junket. I was interviewing Gillian Anderson.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I
Wow.
stayed on for like a couple of days to meet up with the British Cheerleading Association, and they gave me material. I came back, I looked at everything, with whatever I could find on the pathetic World Wide Web then, which is very, very small.
Right.
Put things together, and with the rules I remembered from school and how I thought things could be better, I designed our competition. And so that's where in 2000 we ended up with Cheer 2000. It kicked off, and we were really fortunate because we had, I think, I don't remember, I have the videotape somewhere and I have the results in a box somewhere, but we had pretty good response for a first time competition. I'm pretty sure we had like 20 or 30 teams. That's good.
Wow. Yeah.
That was interesting because I based it on what we did in school, not we didn't know, like time limits and what people did outside. So for the first year, routines were like 10 to 12 minutes long.
Oh my god.
What?
Oh my
12 minutes.
gosh.
30 teams.
You can imagine the judges, and they were like, "What's
The
going
judges
on?"
would be.
And they're like,
Tired.
"Why are they singing their own songs?" I'm like, "Because that's how we do it here." And they're like, "You all need a real crash course in what cheerleading
need
needs
a
to be.
revamp.
Sport cheerleading needs to be like."
So
So that
did that
happened.
experience inspire you to just streamline the entire cheerleading structure? Because you mentioned earlier that in high school there really wasn't, it was more of a show rather than like a sport in terms of how you guys do cheerleading. And then eventually when you started doing those competitions, you were saying that they were 10 to 12 minutes long and they're singing their own songs to the routine. So did that somehow inspire you to create more structure, at least or at least to contribute to the structure that cheerleading as we know today?
Well, we knew the British Cheerleading Association was working with, the American side. And so they, the first thing they were like, technique, you guys have no technique. You're going to kill each other, which was true. I mean, I remember we did, when I was in school, the year, one of the years we did like a collapsing pyramid. It was terrible because you just had 3 or 4 tiers collapse down to be a flat pyramid on the ground.
Oh my
That
gosh.
hurts. Like girls have boobs, okay? So it hurts. But that's where, with whatever they saw, and seriously, we had some of the most random things in the first year of competition. From the names to the outfits to what people were wearing. And I remember one of our Miss Malaysias now, I remember her being in that team, and one of our, she was from an
Wow.
international school, and it's quite funny because they ended up bumping to each other on the mat, and then they fought on the floor. So it was sort of like, start pushing each other and giving dirty looks, and it was hilarious. But so that was our first year. From there, then we had workshops. We learned to fix things. We picked it up really fast. Everyone picked it up really fast. So the second year was a big difference. We cut the routine down by half, but 5 minutes is still really, really long.
Yeah.
And so then the next year it got cut by, down to I think 3 minutes. So we just kept evolving. See, this is when we were decent. This is like 7 years when we had time to evolve.
This is 7 years in.
This picture. We had proper uniforms. We knew how to do things. In 2000 to 2003, it was just like a disaster. I mean, that's what it was a learning curve, a very, very steep learning curve, but it worked because, if you see how it's grown over the years, we
Yeah.
really, when you say it's grown by leaps and bounds, it's literally grown by that. We've now got cheerleading skills in it. Before, if like for me, because I could do handsprings and cartwheels, so I was considered like valuable as a member of the team. There were so many who couldn't do anything. I remember my second year in the team on sports day, because anything goes, right? We did things like the worm. Our outfit looked like a Dutch girl with lampshade dresses. It was stupid, but the captain thought it was a good thing then. It was crazy.
Maybe it was a thing.
No,
Maybe it
it's
was
for
something
sure. We're very sure of it. All of us hated the outfit, and she was like, "No, I'm captain, and so it goes." And so we looked like fools, but it was what it was.
Did you guys win anything for that or something?
My first year, we won. My first year, the
Wow.
team won. The
Uh-huh.
second year, it was like that, and then the third year, I kind of had to drop out halfway because the school. It was really interesting because my school allowed us to cheer as well as be part of the if you had other roles on sports day, if you were an athlete, you could do that. So it was quite hilarious, like my first and second year, because we'd be cheering, and then I'm like, oh my god, my my part is up now, my race is up now, and I'd go and I'd change, and I'd run, and then I'd win my race, and I'd go back and change back in my uniform, and then go and cheer again, and I'm like, oh, it's my turn again, and then would change out. It was crazy, and there were so many people who were doing it. I think we were just the overachievers, and it came to a point the school's like, y'all are hogging everything, and we need to give more people chances to be part of something. So
Yeah.
I had to decide in my final year whether to stay on with the team or drop out. But I kind of knew the situation with the team then, because we had somebody who was very green, who became captain. Basically, the prettiest girl got picked, and that was also, I think, probably like her first year. And so, I was like, yeah, I don't think stay on for that. So I went for personal glory, and it paid off, though. I ended up with 6 gold medals as an athlete.
Wow.
So I was a track and field athlete, and I ended up with 6 gold medals. I ended up representing the school in the district competition, won a medal for long jump, third place, and ended up being selected to be part of the state program.
I think it's just
So
it's
it was really crazy.
yeah, I think I don't know, I think it's a natural thing, because like most of the people we've had on the show, whenever they tell us their stories about how they started off with cheerleading, it's always either they were dancers, they were gymnasts, they were part of track and field. There's always a sport that's related, and I guess you're all just naturally athletic.
And
You
I,
just
and I think the
I
best thing
know
though
I've been
is that
told
they chose to stay, or I think the best thing though that is you guys chose to stay or put a lot of your passion into cheer. I mean, to imagine, I mean, already launching a competition and having 30 teams join right away is already a big thing. But if you
Yeah.
never went to London, actually, if you never stayed for a while just so that you can stick around with the British cheer community there, you wouldn't have brought back so much that moved. Like it rippled into cheer Malaysia now, and that's just because you
Yeah.
were passionate about this thing that we didn't even know what it was yet at the time, but you were
Yeah.
so passionate about it, you actually made something like
Thank you.
this.
I had a lot of people tell me I was crazy, but thank you. um, what happened? I think for us, it was a combination of things that worked out, in favor of the sport, because I had supportive bosses who wanted to reach out to the younger community, to the youth of Malaysia. We were fortunate to get a sponsor who understood what it was about. And we had people who are willing to help us. You cannot build a competition, and take it to higher levels without all these factors. Passion alone cannot grow a sport. I know people say, "Oh, as long as you've got the passion, you've got the drive, fact is, if you don't have money, it's not going to move. Money makes the world go around. It's a real fact of life.
That's
And
so
now you're
true.
all serious. I've made you all serious. It's not good.
I have a question, Bev. So from that 10-minute craziness of the routine, how did it get to transition to the modern during the 2000, like you said, when I showed Darius and Cheng
Well, that was
Chu?
2007. That was, yeah, you can see the big difference.
How did it
I
get
have,
there? So what was the
oh God, I have my
change?
chair picture somewhere here. I can't show it though. Because there's too many albums. There are too many albums. I don't know which one it's in. But um basically what happened was, again, we brought the British Cheerleading Association down to judge for the first year. It was go big or go home. We weren't just going to do a small competition and that's it. We booked a stadium. We booked a stadium. We had 10 of them come down. So they did a performance and they did, they judged the whole thing. They did workshops and everything. So whatever was wrong, which they saw from the competition when we had the clinics, it was immediately remedied there, and right away, we did a review of the competition of what to drop, what to cut down, how they do it over there. We fine-tuned everything in time for the next year. So next year was a really, really a big difference. It obviously, just not just routine, but even down to technique. And you could see, that's where the top schools started dominating right away. And it happened to be schools that had that history. But it's also really, really interesting then because I think that if we didn't bring the British Cheerleading Association down, it's not just for that, but you can only hope to see and learn, but to watch them put on a full performance with the correct technique, it makes you go like, gee, we're so crap. We need to do that.
That's funny. So wait, it's just a British Cheerleading Association, and there was no ICU yet at the time, or
There
what?
was no ICU. So the ICU, I think, started showing up in, when was that?
I think around the same time with
2008?
us. Yeah.
2007, 2008, 2000,
Right.
probably 2006, 2007, if I remember correctly, because
Okay.
we did our very first cheer camp in 2007 with their help. So I think they came about like that. You all know the whole, history and drama of there being another federation that stepped in before the ICU was formed. And
Yeah.
to be honest, because they were Japanese based, we did welcome it. They brought in a certain discipline, but
Mm.
we had them down one year and realized that they couldn't communicate with people. The language barrier was just ridiculous.
Oh,
I mean, you can only, again, even with technique, you can only show so much. If you can't verbally explain it, it's
Right.
not going to work.
this
Yeah.
is the
And
IFC, right?
yeah, and then eventually, obviously, we disagreed with the way they did things with their policies, and I sent a scathing letter when
Yeah.
I think their treasurer resigned, and the president then he just appointed himself treasurer as well. I'm like, what the heck is that? Nobody did that. So I sent a scathing letter, and then they're like, we don't like her, and then it was like, yeah, I don't like you, and bye. So
So around the same time, yeah, I think ICU came over here and introduced themselves maybe a year after Malaysia, I think.
okay.
So you guys are first. So and then after that, what was your journey with the ICU and the charm?
Okay, so what happened was with the British Cheerleading Association towards the mid 2000s, I think about 2005, they brought an American lady with them, and she was with the NCSSE that did
Yes.
safety certification courses and stuff like that.
Mm.
And with her, we ended up that's where, that's how charm ended up being what it was, because we learned the American technique. We had that kind of advice. And she brought people, who could help. Obviously, there were differences there are differences in the way things are taught, but it's kind of like the teaching world as well. In the yesteryears of coaching and teaching, even like in other sports, when I was in athletics, you had coaches who were just more punitive, who were more, it's like, do as I say. There is no if, and, or but, ifs, ands, or buts. It's just my word is law. And that's how it kind of was. We learned to relax a bit more, with the American style, but there was also a certain strictness to it. And I think what the ICU introduced to us is that you don't have to be harsh or too strict with the kids to get them to learn. Learning can be fun, and I've also learned that with the projects I've worked on in the professional, in my professional line of work, which is public relations. I've worked with the British Council, and I've worked on their teacher development programs, and that's where you learn things that you cannot control everything, and it can't be one. There is no one size fits all solution. So you kind of have to adapt. You have to learn. You have to adjust. And with kids, you come across all kinds. People are going to disagree and say I'm really mean to say this, but what I realized then was because I ended up sending my dog to puppy school, and I had a golden retriever, and we're going to train this one really, right? And that's where I realized, it's the same messaging. How you train dogs is how you can train kids.
That's I'm sorry, I don't have kids yet, but I feel like that's something that's going to be very possible, because I sent my puppy to puppy school, and after that I'm like, I think the techniques are going to be really good for kids one day.
They are because you have to understand, like dogs, they're not like humans where we can very intricate details and a lot. They're very straightforward. Then they cower in fear, or they're going to have this trauma.
Right.
Humans are able to get over it, but why traumatize a child or anyone at an early age? That is someone's child. It's not your child. You
Right.
have to be mindful that, and this is something I've drawn up, which I've also proposed to, is I took sociology in college. I know there are a lot of random facts coming in here. But one thing I was taught is that sometimes this miscommunication, misunderstandings arise from, lack of clarity, or, something not being conveyed clearly.
Right.
So the communication breakdown to some extent. And what happens is that we assume that when we say something, like if I say something to you, or if I were to ask you a question, and this helped me out a lot even when I was a journalist, we assume that that person's going to process that question or the facts that we're throwing at them and respond the way we want them to. But the one thing people forget and don't realize is that all of us are different. We grow up in different households. We have different upbringing. There are cultural, financial, societal differences. Even in your local community, the person who lives down the street is not going to have the same ideals as you. It's really, there's so many factors involved.
Yeah.
So how a person interprets that, whatever you say, to execute what you want, if you have a request or a demand or an instruction for them, it really is there are too many factors involved. So dogs are like the simplest things. You just have to keep it straight and basic to the point. Children are kind of like that. The younger they are, they're still learning.
Yeah.
You don't know what they're going through at home, what more, other complicated things. All it takes is a, fight with a friend, fight with a boyfriend, being yelled at by a parent, being embarrassed by a parent, and that's it. They're just, distracted for the whole day. So it's all these little factors that as coaches and even as officials and all that, we have to be mindful and basically, learn how to adapt. So with how the British Council worked with teachers over here, English teachers, is they brought in reflective practices. Now, teachers over here for the longest time would just, if you're not listening, go stand in a corner, do this extra work, or they'll, in some
Right.
schools they hit the kids. And that's a no-go. I mean, for God's sake, it's a modern world. And what happened with the reflective practices in the areas that they were introduced in, you realize that the kids picked up language better. The teachers were happier, the kids were happier, like learning was fun. It wasn't like, I don't want to go to school because I don't like that teacher.
Right.
It's like, I
Yeah.
want to go to school because my teacher's there and I want to see my teacher and I want to learn from my teacher. So I think that's the same thing that cheerleading can incorporate. We talk a lot about improving skills, and there's so much about technical skills, and we talk about judging and all these other fine points, but it's the soft skills, the social skills. I think that as coaches are teachers, we can do so much because we talk about being, we tell the kids to be the best that they can be. I think we owe it to them as coaches, as officials, as judges, to be the best that we can be, to set that example. We have to walk the talk.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good point of view, because I guess it's going to be very helpful for coaches who are watching the show right now, or eventually is gonna catch back when we publish this live stream, because that's true. I mean, even as adults, we don't always see things the same way. We process things differently, as you said. So, it's like one thing that I learned, at least for puppy school, is like it's positive reinforcement for them.
Yes.
And I think that's something that's I think I carried through, not just, well, I guess my husband. He's a big kid, so so yeah. But I think that's a really good point of view for for coaches to understand and to think about, when it comes to coaching their kids, especially now that they're doing trainings online. But going back to like what you said about people, of course, being different, and I'm sure you've met a lot of people from here in the Philippines and abroad. I just want to go to the ICU judging part a little bit. How has it been judging Filipino routines compared to like other countries that you've been to? And is there something like in the routines that are uniquely Filipino, like you're surprised now, oh, this is something that I've just seen in the Philippines? Or is there any like specific technique that's, well, I guess in ICU's eyes are like, that's not right. That you see like across different teams that we need to change, or we need to update ourselves with when it comes to technique.
Well, I think, when it comes to technique's always being updated. It's really,
Yeah.
really up to the coaches, because you guys are in touch with the teams more to, watch the videos, see what's going on, the newest trend and stuff like that. We always have to bear in mind, though, that safety is of the utmost importance. Remember the rules, remember your level restrictions, and therefore remember what you can do within those guidelines. I know people get creative. Asians tend to try to find wonderful loopholes to do something. It's a very Asian thing. I have realized that with all the competitions I've judged, with the competitions I've watched. I don't judge. I have judged a lot in recent years. I've been more involved in policy and just behind the stage, behind the scenes kind of thing. So I would say when I went over the Philippines, like with UAAP, I took one look at it. I was like, yeah, that was us, like in the early years. I think they still haven't gotten out. I understand they want a certain novelty factor, but I feel they should move on. The rest of us are complying. You can add something that's still novelty factor and it's safe. I do think the one thing that's very distracting, I know it's also, again, very unique to the event, is that they allow the supporters to be part of the thing. So they beat the drums, they do all kinds of things. And that's where that is hard to judge if we're coming in from the outside, because really, wait, what's going on? Like, are they done? Do we score that?
Yeah. Are they overtime?
Yeah, that was a lot of getting used to. But I think any judge worth their salt, it would be able to adapt to the situation that, of, because every event has certain specific rules. The ICU provides a framework. You have this fixed set of rules, and the framework is there, but it basically is a guideline for progression, and eventually to aim for the highest level, which is worlds. And then obviously now, even on the ICU side, we're working towards Olympics.
Yeah.
But I suppose, if you're doing it for kindergarten kids, you can't expect it to be so structured. These kids can only do so much physically, because that's all their bodies can do. Mentally, there's only to a certain extent they can absorb something. I think
Right.
coaches need to be mindful that, you can't, I know there are a lot of, those who want excellence, and they want, like the best Pee-wee team and whatever team, but you're dealing with children with who have physical and mental limitations. It
Yeah.
is just what it is. We all grew up the same way. They're in different cultures. Some kids progress faster. It's also the same with like with your team. Your team is as good as the weakest member. It isn't that the weak person has to adapt. You are as strong as the weakest member in your team. If this person is weak, why are they weak? And that's where reflective practices and reflective teaching, I think, is very important. You don't assume a kid is weak. You have to understand why they're weak. Is it
Right.
because if you're getting kid from a poor areas, nutrition wise, they don't have that solid physical, that background of having grown up food and less care. If you're looking at a kid who's always, late to class, is it because they live so far away, they can't get to class, and the family has financial problems, and in your case, some of the kids come from the far out islands, and that's why in it
Yeah.
for you guys it works, because you have supportive educational bodies like the universities, who offer these sponsorships to these kids, so the kids have something to aspire to even at a young age.
Yeah.
But you have other countries which don't have that kind of support or any infrastructure, and the kids are just aimlessly moving through. I think with Asian cultures as well, there's a limitation to how much you can do. A lot of parents like, okay, you had your fun in high school, you're going to university now, so you need to stop with the sports. So
Yeah.
it's good, like your universities actually offer scholarships, and it encourages kids to still be in the sport, because if the sport dies out, you have a strong grassroots level, and then it moves up to the mid level and towards like you're going to that higher levels. But if you've got that gap and then you expect them to jump, it's going to suffer somewhere.
Yeah. And
Right.
coming from, I guess I want to just ask about your point of view, since you mentioned that it is common, even here in the Philippines, especially for some of the schools that offer really strong cheerleading programs, that, when you get to university, you have to be more focused with getting your degree, because being able to graduate with a good degree will get you a better job, better pay, so better life, and that kind of, I guess, I don't know, sometimes takes out the life out of the kid. And so what is your point of view when it comes to incorporating sports or even dance while still in university, or for as long as you're studying? What is the importance of that
See,
extracurricular activities? And I think that's also a good point of view as a parent yourself. Yeah.
this is what I discovered. When we had this problem where the kids be good for like at some of the competitions, and then you watch some teams in some schools, it just goes upside down, and even the participation, the number of teams, you get this whole roller coaster kind of thing of how many people come in, and the results vary. And I think that's where you know especially with setting up the cheerleading association and running it, and when you run that, you realize that if you want to build a national team, you need consistency and you need supportive parents. At that point, when we first created competition, and with the way kids were starting to, like in my school, kids could only sign up for cheerleading in their last 3 years of school. You
Yeah.
can't do anything if you don't have a gymnastics background. You don't have any background in it. That's where it's just going to taper off when they go head off to university. It is just natural. They'll be distracted, and there's nothing for them to aspire to. So by building the cheerleading association, we created something that the kids could see that could be something after. There is life after college. You can move to become a coach, and then you can become a judge and all that kind of thing. I would say the one thing we realized when we started organizing our own competitions, not just like with the newspaper that I worked with, but as a cheerleading association, and we organized and we created our own nationals. I think a lot of people disagreed with me then. There was a lot of focus on we need to just let the ones who are really good at it, steal the show and all. I'm like, no, but then you're still going to hit that dead end. Eventually, half the team's going to drop out.
Yeah.
There's just not enough of a talent pool to select a national team from. So I thought it would be good to focus on the primary age group, like the juniors, the peewees, the really, really young ones. And from there, that's what I realized. It's how you condition not just the kids, but you condition the parents. Then you're educating parents to respect the kids, not just the interest, but to be supportive, to understand that you have to have commitment. And commitment is not just financial commitment. It's, a moral commitment. It's a commitment on so many levels. And it doesn't just implement certain discipline in the kids. It also teaches the parents to behave. And, that's where now I think, when we had the odd recalcitrant parent who caused trouble in a competition, but most of the other parents, they respected how things were run and the rules, and everyone knew what they had to do. And that's where I think for it to, a lot of the other countries that were successful, that was the thing I noticed, that they spent a lot of time with the younger kids, educating them and giving them opportunities. So I think that's the same thing like in the Philippines. And I know a lot of Asian countries tend to still focus on kind of like the tweens and the teenage group for, the athletes. But I would say it's time to build, if you don't have it yet, time to build up the younger ones, the
Yeah.
preteens, basically.
I think, Coach Evan, remember, I think we've had this conversation from previous episodes before. And if, Boss Itos, you want to come back, like, pop in.
Where's he hiding? Why is he hiding? Itos, come back.
Because I don't know if you've seen. I'm not also sure which episode it was, Bev, but I remember Coach Evan and Boss Itos, we're discussing a similar scenario, right, Coach? Now we build up the kids as early as we can, and for better talent pool selection for Team Pilipinas, right, Coach?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is. We do see that gap. I think all throughout. I mean, all throughout your discussion, I'm just wide-eyed and actually really, really paying attention. I'm actually taking down notes.
You can rewind.
I agree, and I resound on a bunch of stuff that you were saying. The gaps usually do affect the sport a lot more than we think. Just not having that opportunity or that stage for certain ages really will distract you. There are other stuff. There's so much other stuff to do, right? If you lack that, if you force that cheerleader to jump certain skill levels, it could actually be detrimental for them to continue at all. So, you're saying that in Malaysia, you guys have actually focused on the grassroots, which I think is the right way to go. Have you started seeing the fruits of that effort with actually focusing
Actually,
on
it did.
younger group?
That kind of took off really, really well because I think then when we had competitions, when the competition grew, we ended up expanding categories because it wasn't just level 1, level 2. Then we had to expand to level 1 for that age group and level 1 for this age group, and it really, really just gave the kids a lot of opportunities. And I remember that my final year as president of the federation, that was our 10th anniversary for all nationals. And we had a record number of athletes that year. It was, I think, 1,300 athletes competing at nationals. We had an international category as well, but 1,003, and so many of them were these little young kids, and they are so dedicated. They're so disciplined. It's amazing because I would say that the younger kids, it's kind of like, the whole puppy school thing. You teach them and then you've caught their attention and then you reward them and all the positive reinforcement. Um, and they are willing to please you. They are happy to please you and they want to show you what they can do. And that's what happened with us. You had all these young kids who were willing to do whatever they could. They were really, honestly, you could see it in their eyes and the way they did things, trying to be the best that they could be. And in many ways, they were so much better than the older kids, because the older kids, if you have kids who have been cheerleaders since, a young age, and then they move up, that discipline is still there. And I mean, if they're cocky, it's because they know that they've got that confidence of that they're good. But you have kids who join cheerleading, like when they're 15 or something, and then they think they're the best thing in the world when they're not, and then they give you attitude, and it's just, and that's where you're like, can you look at this bunch of kids and see how coordinated they are, and look at what you guys are doing, So in a way, it's kind of nice once in a while to tell the big kids, like, the children are better than you, but that's not the way to do it. I know, but sometimes you just,
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think in the long run, it really brings up the level overall. I know that
it does.
Team
It creates
Malaysia,
that.
have you seen younger teams as well, for the ICU Worlds, correct?
Yeah.
Team Malaysia, right? Yeah.
Team Malaysia, our first really big official Team Malaysia Worlds was a high school team. It was a stunt group. It was an all-girl stunt group. But they were 16, 17 when we picked them. They were part of the top school, that school's been champion for a while, the S4E2 school. And basically, back then when we had that lack of choice, they were something that we could put forward because they had the skill, they were willing to commit, they had parents who were also willing to commit. And in terms of going to Worlds, I'm going to say commit is a big thing because financially it cost a lot, and these kids were willing to pay. And for, I think for first timers to finish 9 out of 21, it's a good thing. They finished in the top 10 for first time.
Definitely.
Yeah. But you
And
guys
aside
have been like creaming people at Worlds. Come on. Don't talk to me about us doing well at Worlds. You guys go there and just like whoosh. Random's doing such a
I think
fantastic job.
Philippines has been there, like knocking on the door, just peeking at the podium,
Oh, the days,
lingering about
days
that
coming.
area.
Yeah, but in terms of development, Bev, where do you see like Southeast Asian teams in terms of? I mean, we always talk and we always compare notes, but you're seeing it from a bigger perspective. In terms of, I mean, you've been in the worlds, you've judged at the worlds, and now you're working with ICU, the ethics, so the organizing body, and you've always been outspoken in terms of the rules and the regulations and the strategies that should be employed. Like you said, it's very unique in Asia and Southeast Asia. But where do you see Southeast Asia in terms of the whole development of the sport? Where do you see it going? I mean, you and me, because we started our own organizations from scratch. Where do you see it going now? Now that you see the younger ones taking over, I'm not in your position yet. I should pass the baton already. I'm still trying to hold on, sitting down on my seat, right? But soon that should be passed over. Like you, where do you see it going? obviously there's improvement, but where do you see it going in terms of the development, and what should be done to spur that development?
Well, I think like what I've seen so far with some of with what's been online, even like with you guys, and it's good that people are taking advantage of technology to do virtual competitions. Um, but it's also a really tricky thing because that's just finding an outlet to exhibit.
All right.
If you talk about building things and moving things along, I think there are a lot of factors in Southeast Asia which will, kind of hamper things because it's all, I feel there is a certain level of politics, not just, in the region, but like domestically in each country because you hear of even like over here, our government one day we woke up and there was a new government. It was back to politics. When you have things like this happening, it affects policy because you can't get things through. Something you were working on has just be completely derailed. um Even like national federations, people come and go, and then the reality is, I think the sad reality, and I'm sure there are a lot of people going to be really annoyed with me for saying this, is that you have people too busy trying to please politicians. They're trying to suck up here to try to build up their own credit and stuff like that. And because they're doing that, that's where they try to hold on to power as well. But then, it begs the question, what are you doing this for? Do you really think you're doing this for the sport, or are you now doing this for yourself? Because that's where the road to, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That is a very, very true thing. People believe that they're doing something for the greater good, and then how much integrity do you have to hold on to that, to decide when to say no to something? I think you all know I'm totally infamous for saying no to so many things, because if you let fear hold you back, if you let fear dictate your next move, because you don't want to lose your position or you don't want to lose your money making advantage being in a certain position, or you don't want to lose your goodwill with a certain politician or with a certain person in a corporation or whatever it is, then eventually it looks like you're doing it for you and not for the cheerleaders. Because, where's it going to go? What's the end? What's the end game? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think
yeah. In a general sense,
So-
I mean, Bev and I, it's more the adults actually that have a lot of issues in,
Yeah.
in the sport,
I would
right?
say that the kids just want to go out there and do what they love doing. The kids
Right.
just want to show off. They want to show off their skill because they've worked so hard. And
Yeah,
it's the adults who have their own agendas. Again, we are human beings. We're complex beings.
Right.
So everyone has their own, plan. And some people are just too afraid to break out of a bubble or to move out of a comfort zone.
yeah,
There are people who just want to do things a certain way, and they believe everyone should just do things that certain way. And some of it is culturally, because I think you have countries where, patriarchal ideas and values are, put forefront the most. Some of them don't believe women should be there in a position of power. Some people don't believe that women should be, even in upper management, and or women shouldn't even be standing on top of a man's shoulders. I think we have a few countries where culturally that was very taboo, and cheerleading has, broken that in that sense. It's broken down those walls, which is great. But while they agree and they let that slide, they're still, to a certain extent, they're going to say, no, you can only do this. So I think for Southeast Asia, because there's that Asian caution, there's that whole Asian restraint that's always there. We'll still be, we'll be at different countries will be at different levels at and to move forward, like if you look at the the European countries, ever since worlds came about, and they and ICU built everything up really fast, you can see that Europe is now just miles ahead of everybody, and that's because and they're catching up really really quickly. In fact, they're
Right.
better than the US, some of the US teams. Again, it depends on which category and what skill level. um it's because I think to some extent they're very outspoken, and they believe in doing what's right. So you get that. Yes, you still, there will always be somebody somewhere looking to, fill their own coffers, to move things to their advantage and affect policy that affects them. So the thing is, I suppose, like for us in the sport, those of us who are moving forward or, guiding things, we have to decide what our stand is going to be. Are you going to take the neutral stand, the stand of the sport, and fight for the sport? Or are you, going to be fighting for the kids alone, which is not necessarily for the sport?
Yeah.
Or are you doing your own thing because you've got a hidden agenda? What is it?
Yeah. Well, I guess it also comes with the territory now as cheerleading grows. There's so many other things, attached to it.
Yes.
Besides the purity of the sport, it's becoming commercial. People can, have a good living, organizing and things like that. So it's part of the whole evolution, I guess, in terms of in
Yeah.
terms of the sport. But let me shift gears, Bev. Um, let's. You've been judging in the ICU. You've been. How many times have you judged the worlds at the worlds?
Oh, I think
Too many.
I started in 2010, 11. That was the year the volcano exploded. So I'll
So about
always remember that volcano with the long name that nobody can say. So that was my first year. I think I judged for like 3 years, and then after that, because my son tagged along, that was just not possible. And then I got more involved in the commissions and the policy stuff, and that,
Yeah.
and all. We also, yeah. But I was still judging, in the regional level and stuff like that.
Right.
I've gone for coaches conference in Vienna and judged in Ireland as well. It just
Oh, Europe. Yeah, that's right.
yeah, so that was kind of fun, seeing the European side of things. Also very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. What? So there are a lot of these because we've had coaches courses here, coaches and judges and courses here the last 2 years. There was only 2 years, and 2020, obviously, there was the last one, and then
Yeah.
today we won't have one this year. So they have a dream. They have a dream of going to the worlds and judging at the worlds, and that's their dream. Tell us what it's like as a judge, because we've gone there as a competition, we've gone there as an athlete, as a coach, but never as a judge. Tell us what it's like. I mean,
I think for judge, it's gotten a bit stricter, I think, in some ways over the years, because there are more demands. You have, it's such high level of skill over there. When you're going to worlds, you're basically looking at the best of the best, of each country. And what happens then is, you have to go through the whole thing of submitting your resume, and if you get selected, they're going to tell you, and then you get there, they brief you, they have judge meetings, you're given your material, your packs, and everything. I think I was fortunate in that sense. Like when I judged, it was more relaxed, and partly also maybe because we had fewer teams, and I think expectations were different, and we didn't have the Olympic pressure. But now, because we're we're partially recognized, for the Olympics, we have to conform to certain things. So I think there's more pressure on judges today to deliver. When you go there, you have to wake up early. then you're going to have a briefing. It's all very structured. You've got a roster. You know what you're judging, and everything's of the utmost secrecy. And I think it's gone now to the point that you're not allowed to even make much with the kids. You have to be sequestered, just to completely maintain neutrality.
Mm.
So there's a judge's room, and the judges all, your meals, your snacks, everything's there. So you spend your time there, and then on the days that you don't have to judge, you have your day off and you do whatever you want. But you're expected to be at the place when they tell you to, and then they transport you there, and you do what you need to do. It's not hard and fast where you can't really deal with the kids. You do see people who are friendly and they chat with the kids. The late Robert Torres, who recently passed away from COVID, he was one of those he was not just ambassador, but even as a judge, you found the picture. So like he basically would, he'd stand the corridor, and like with the kids from the South American countries, he would have a little chat with them and all this sort of thing. It's just, I think as a judge and at that world stage, you just have to be mindful of how you present yourself, how, what you say, who you talk to, because if you're too friendly, it's gotten to the point where it's so competitive. If you're too friendly, somebody accuses you of something. It's always the case in any competition.
Interesting.
That-
So,
I'm sure before you went to the Worlds, you had a lot of experience judging other competitions in Malaysia and in other countries as well. How long did it take for you to prepare for or be ready for a Worlds level event to judge?
Well, you kind of have to put enough hours in before they can consider you. So I was fortunate because when we had our cheer competitions here, the school competitions, I ended up having to step in as a judge because one of the judges wasn't, he wasn't feeling so well. So they were down a judge, and that's where by that time the American lady who had, become the advisor for all of us, she was like, "You need to get in here now. You're sitting at this table." And I was like, "I don't know what to do." She was like, "You drew all these things up. You know what's supposed to be in there. We've talked to you about this." She was like, "Just sit next to me and I'll guide you." And it was like a baptism of fire. You just get in there and you do kind of thing. I think the more complicated thing over the years has been because, it's not just a simple one set of rules. When I started out, that's what it was. And with a lot of countries, it's a really simple set of rules. But if you're an infractions judge, everything is on your shoulders, because if you mark somebody wrong, they're going to come and fight for that half a point, 1 point. And it's, you really need to know your stuff. I think in Asia, especially Malaysia and Singapore, we have this Chinese word that's called kiasu, which is afraid to lose. It's a Hokkien word. It means afraid to lose. People hate losing. They just hate knowing that they lost that point. If there was an infraction or if they scored less, and they come and they try and argue with you or beg you in some way, and they'll shove videos in your face.
They do. Even if it doesn't really affect the ranking, they still want that point. It's their point.
Yeah. So the thing is, that's where you have to learn to handle these people, and then that's where I think as a judge, that was something I had to put my foot down. I was like, I scored this way. But that's the thing. If you're a judge, you have to be able to justify the scores that you've given. You can't just randomly say, okay, I'll just put that there. I mean, everyone knows there's a frame, there's a structure. But if the whole, you're not the only judge. There are, it's minimum 5 in the panel. The other 4 are scoring within a certain range, and you're completely out. They're going to come and ask you, like, what are you doing? What's this?
Right.
Do you
just to
know
share,
how to judge?
Boss Itos has been inviting at least me for a number of years now to start judging for an NCC event, or even Coach Anya. But I always say no, not because I'm not confident that I can judge the events, but I'm always afraid of having to deal with the coaches right after the event.
Right.
But I think it's something that you learn through experience, and just you just have to be able to justify, just like what you said. But for me, that's one of the biggest factors that I'd consider before I actually go into a competition to judge. Is
Yeah,
to
but
deal
I
with
think
Well, you have to have confidence in yourself and your abilities. That thing, and you know you obviously if you can guide your team and they can score high, that means you know your stuff. It's just
Right.
that when you're in a judging panel, that's where you have to work collectively as a team. If and your head judge should be able to guide you to say like, like guys, I think something's off here, or again, you have to also read because sometimes we go to a competition and you realize that the kids are really not up to mark, not to the standards that we're used to. And the thing is, you have to remember, we're now assessing them like they're judging, like they're performing their worlds, but that's not fair to them. If you've come down to their local level, and that is all that group of kids is capable of,
Right.
so then you kind of have to adjust the curve. That's the best thing. It's like when you talk about education, all that, you kind of have to adjust the curve according to where you're judging, because
Yeah.
even that's where people brief you and they say, look, we do things this way and the kids are at a certain level, because then you're managing expectations. If I think some of the early mistakes some of us did was we went in and we were in that sense a bit brutal. We're like, no. And then they're like, yeah, but we need to, they're like, they're not worth those marks. But again, do you want to disappoint or traumatize kids with a big fail and then they'll never come back? Or do you want to give them something passable, we adjust it accordingly and passable, and then hope that the kids understand and work from it?
Yeah. Actually, how would you explain the way we do scoring in cheerleading for fans, for those whether they're hardcore fans or
Right.
just casual fans of cheerleading? Because one of the feedbacks that I often get when Coach Evan and I do these NCC events, and then they, of course, I ask them to watch on TV or just come by at MOA to watch. They always ask me like, they don't get it. I mean, they know that like this specific team like really stood out like from a visual point of view, but like how do you score it? Because like of course from guys, for example, basketball is like easy to understand. If you shoot the
Yeah.
ball from this range, you get this much points, from this range, this much points,
Yeah.
etc. But like how would you explain how we do scoring in cheerleading to these to the fans, just so they have better, I guess, debates online on Twitter
Yeah.
based on
I think that fans need, it's also, if you're really, really a fan, it's not just a visual aspect. You need to understand, yes, cheerleading is a spectator sport. It's visually captivating. You always think the team that's the snazziest is or the best, or the flashiest is the one that should win.
right.
I'm about to, shatter a few illusions, because number one is, if you haven't taken a look at the score sheet and you have no idea what the score sheet is about, if you don't understand that the judges have a lot of things to look at, then you don't really understand your sport.
Right.
So, there are a lot of factors that judges, you have to be able to, when you sit there at that panel and when you're judging, you're one individual looking at a team of 16 to 30 people. Your eyes can only see so much. These fans, they'll go and they'll scrutinize. I'm like, for God's sake, get off the damn screen. You cannot be scrutinizing. In that case, why have a live competition? Because then you're not judging it as you see it. You're judging it like replay and replay and replay. It got to the point, for example, in Malaysia, where it was absurd because people would come and we're like, no, if we look at a replay, it's from our camera, because it's from our point of view where we see it at our angle, because that's how we see it. If you're
Right.
bringing me a video that's from this side and that side, and it's like instant replay and you're capturing all angles, it doesn't work. We judge from this point of view, and therefore if we review something, it has to be from this point of view. Your little films on camera, your little movies on, your little videos don't matter because it's not the right thing. So eventually what we had to do here was not just introduce a fee for people who wanted to I would like protest or even like appeal.
Right.
We also had to put a clause that said we will review the video, but if we see anything else wrong, you will be deducted for those. You will receive penalties for things we missed the first time. Hello, Archie. I see you. But
Hi, Coach Archie.
hi, Ramon.
Coach Ramon.
Hi, Coach.
Hindi
Hello.
naman, Rebecca.
Yeah. So the thing is, I think fans, we understand, we love them for their passion. The sport will not get anywhere without fans because fans always take things to, they're the ones who take a team higher.
Right.
But I think fans need to be realistic in that sense. You're sitting there and, it's the same thing. There are people who say, oh, why can't it be scored like gymnastics and you deduct half a point here? That one had a bobble and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, in gymnastics, you have like 12 judges, 10 or 12 judges judging one person. Cheer, it's a flip. You have that panel of 5 and you as one judge, you are judging 16 to 30 people.
Yeah.
It is impossible unless you are a robot for your eyes to capture everything, and sometimes the strangest, most random things happen on the mat and they distract from a main thing that could happen. It is unfortunate, but we are all human. Errors happen. And sometimes you just get fixated on like, what the hell is that thing, and then you miss out on that stunt group in the corner that probably did a fantastic back toss. It happens. There are times when we've had, I remember I judged in Australia. I felt really, really bad, but I did laugh at the team at the end because they were struggling. Like they did everything and they were on the floor. It's not like they did stuff in the stunt. They also were in stuff, but they tried doing scorpions and they couldn't hold them. So it was like a really, really strange routine because, they would always like put the leg up and then like, whoops, it would slip out. And I had so many of them trying to do it. I'm like, why are you doing this? If you can't do the skill, don't put it in the routine, right?
Right. Exactly.
So, but that was just in between, and I was just like, and then it came to the end, and the final thing is also a scorpion. And the girl grabbed her foot, and she was holding on to it for dear life, but she couldn't balance. So she's just standing and she's looking at us, and it's that great ending, like boom, and everyone freezes, right? You're supposed to do that finale, like that pose, that picture moment.
Ending, yeah.
She's just trying to hold on, and she's hopping off the mat, and I'm just like, I lost it. I felt so bad for her, but I'm like, what was that? So,
oh my gosh.
But sometimes as a judge we try to be professional, but there are things that sometimes you're like, So it takes a lot of also, of the years. Sometimes people say the judges are so serious. Like, no, people, we would love to show you our expression, but everyone's watching a judge when you sit there. If we're showing, if we're nodding our head and bopping, they're like, but you didn't do that with that team. That's like, oh God, they scrutinize everything you do.
Yeah.
If you smile, they're like, oh, you're showing favor to that team or your friends on that team, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like with this one, there's some things that people do. And then there's some where, you just have them doing stuff and you've got something exciting happening. And then the one thing that a lot of us don't like is the random tumbler or the random the person who can't, basically has no role in the whole sequence that's going on, and so they decide to do their own thing, and then it's like whether they're tumbling or they're just like running around with like a prop, and you're like, it's so distracting. So like it's hard sometimes, and sometimes in when it's not going to happen at worlds or high level competition. This happens a lot at like the lower levels competitions, and lower skilled teams are the ones that end up coming up with the most creative ways to
utilize everybody.
Really test your poker face. You just like Okay.
We can relate. I think Coach Anya and I have shared a lot of poker face moments because of our work in the NCC.
Yeah, like
And for
as
me,
hosts.
like, I've got RBF, so people are like, she's so mean. She just hates everyone. She doesn't smile. I'm like, no, I'm just trying so hard to be fair.
But let's I guess just easing it back to you as Bev, the the mom, the parent. How do you think your experience in cheerleading in any aspect like helped you with becoming a mom and becoming a parent to your son?
I would say because when you learn to communicate with kids like at camp and workshops and stuff like that, it's a skill that you eventually hone. So when it came to you know raising my kid and teaching him, I had that patience, fortunately. um, but I also knew best ways of how to push something onto him, or tackle it when, like, there are days when he's frustrated. And okay, so my son plays Scrabble. He's not just a national player, he's also the former under 14 youth champion, world champion.
Wow.
So um,
Marlene. Wow.
that was in 2018 in Dubai. So he wasn't the overall champion, but he was a category. So he is a world champion. And in it's not just it's in a lot of sports, and kids at a young age, a lot of them, and I've seen it. I'm also involved in the Scrabble Association here. Kids cheat. They're so desperate to show that they're good, or they're so desperate to please their parents. And you have some parents who just rip into the kids in these competitions. Like there was a kid who lost his game, and I think eventually he didn't finish. He's a really good player, but he didn't finish the top thing. And his mom was like, why am I here? You are wasting my time. You have wasted my time and money bringing you here, and that sort of thing. And then this poor kid is just, like slamming doors and kicking tables and chairs because he doesn't know any other way to vent his frustration. But that's because high expectations have been placed on him. What I have told my son, which is also kind of, it comes from cheer, is to be the best that you can be. If you have played your best game, knowing that you've done your prep, you've done your work, and you've you've analyzed and you've read your opponent accordingly, and you've basically played the game, your best game that you could, then even if you don't win, you have nothing to be ashamed about. There are times he was like, oh, I lost this one, and it's like to somebody whom he could have beaten or he's beaten before. And I'm like, okay, what happened? And then we analyze the game, and then you find out like, oh, that person's played a new word. I'm like, well, see, he knew this word and you didn't, so now he deserves that. So it's these little things where you have to, because you're not just as coaches, as parents and everything, we're teaching our kids to view pros and cons of, to learn the balance of the world. And I think there's too much in that sense. Everyone's competitive, but to let the competitiveness take over and dictate what your it rules your kids' lives, I think that's not right. We should always make sure our kids have a happy childhood, that they're happy doing what they do. So even there are times when I say, hey, there's this competition, it's like, no, I'm tired and I don't want to do it. I'm like, it's fine, so we'll just skip that. So for now, like, even with the qualifiers that were done this whole week, there are some games that he lost, and then we analyze it. I'm like, okay, so if we know there's a player who's, that this person's never ever going to score that high in a real game outside, like in a live game, and basically we suspect this person's using what we call an anagrammer, which is they're basically, you can key in the letters that you get on your rack, and then it scrambles it and it tells you the best word. So that's where we suspect there, and there are ways to tell, because these kids have no strategy. With the top players, not just my son, but even with the masters and all that sort of thing, there is strategy and there's certain things. And that a kid is basically not doing the right thing when they're challenging you for like the most trivial words. So that's where we've kind of as a parent, I have to teach my kid to navigate these situations, because you don't want them having animosity towards another kid. We don't know this, again, like the sociology student in me, is always mindful of the fact that we don't know what's going on in that household, whether the kids are held to high expectations and therefore the pressure is there, or you just have some parents who encourage the kids to cheat because they want to look good. We don't know what's going on, but what I can tell my son is that we can put in, we can make a report that we suspect this player of not being, of lacking integrity during the competition. But for you, as a player, to manage your expectations, I always tell them, if it's an online game, assume everyone's going to cheat, because that's the easiest way. Because if you lose, then it's easier to figure it out. But, at live games and when the pressure is there, and it's no joke, you think cheerleading, the kids are spending like the whole day there. They're just going there on the mat for 2.5 minutes and then they're going off. They may come back again and perform, but it's only 2.5 minutes. The Scrabble kids, it's a mind game, and they play like up to 12 games in a day, and each game is 30 minutes long.
Wow.
We have to be at competition events. There are times like I've driven, like I have to wake up at 6 so that we drive and get to a venue in another state, like, by 8 o'clock for registration. And then you wait around and they start at 9 and we finish like sometimes at 8 p.m. But the kids don't get much of a break. They're just playing back to back games. It's a marathon. So in a way, cheer competitions have prepared me as a parent, for the long hours, but it's a different thing, because I have to make sure my son is mentally strong. This is where I think in cheer, a lot of athletes, they're so whiny about like, oh, it's this and this.
Oh my God.
You need to see the Scrabble kids, you may think they're nerds, but my God, they'll trounce you if you had to sit a whole day, and you're just like, it's it's not just the prep, like you cannot freeze in the competition. Your mind has to be like a computer. And I played competitively before, so that, I kind of played competitively a few times, because more like I wanted to try out and see where I could go with it. But it's hard, because I'd rather be there for my kid and analyze his games and support him, instead of him coming and trying to talk to me to discuss things, and I'm stuck in a competition, in a match as well. So I've preferred to not compete. But it was also because, their parents, every parent like brags, or they say this, or, they do this, or sometimes train the kids. I'm like, yeah, now come play against me. I'll kick your ass. So, I'm not as good as the masters, but at least, I can put my money where my mouth is. I know my words. I know how to play. And this way, I also know the situation my kid is in, and the kind of, the pressure or the difficulties that he's facing, so that I can support him better. We can't, unfortunately, ask cheer parents to be part of our routine. They just do not do it.
Let's not do that.
Yeah. We're happy the way things are. Right.
Yeah.
So, time flew. We didn't realize it's almost 10 p.m.
Oh my God.
So, it was so much fun talking to you, but we just have one more segment before we let you go, which is our this or that segment. It's been something we do ever since we started Pep Talk. So, boss or Coach Evan, do you guys want to start with?
Sure. I can start with easy warm up. It's a game, so we're gonna give you two options. You just have to choose which of the two you prefer.
And why?
I can start with easy questions.
Okay.
Oh, and why? Okay. So my first one would be bihun or char kway teow.
Bihun or char kway teow? It's completely different.
But they're both, for me,
Bihun-
noodles.
Bihun's a noodle. Char kway teow is a fried dish. So one
It's
is
like
the raw material,
black
and
noodle,
one is
right?
okay. If it's just that, then it's not cha, because cha means it's been cooked. So it's just
Oops.
bihun or kway teow.
Bihun or kway teow.
Kway teow is nice. So I like kway teow because it's heavier. Like bihun, if you have it, like I like this dish. It's Cantonese fried noodles. So if you and they have both of them in a dish, and they call that yin yang, which is like yin and yang. So you have both noodles in that dish. They fry 'em. But I
Wow.
prefer kway teow because it's more filling. The bihun, when they fry it, it becomes nice and crispy. And then when you pour the
Right.
sauce, it just disappears. So I'm like, yeah,
It
kway teow.
just melts away.
Okay, Anya.
Okay. I just have two. So first, if you had to choose between track and field or cheerleading, what would it be?
Field or cheerleading. I made that choice then. So that kind of became track and field in that year. I suppose it's when you ask me. If you ask me now,
Yeah.
I would say cheer because I am still in cheer and I'm still capable of doing cheer stuff. I can still lift. If you ask me to track and field now, I'd be huffing and puffing and just like, I'll be like, yeah, no. Maybe I can still do javelin. But if you ask me to do the 800 meters again, you ask me to do sprints, you ask me to do hurdles, nah, it's not happening.
Okay, my last this or that. Front handspring or back handspring?
Front, because that's the only one I've always been able to do well. I'm just too heavy for a back one. And also, yeah, my back's just, no.
Not holding up. That's me. How about you, boss?
Yeah, well, it's not a this or that, Bev, but I'd like to just ask a few questions so that they get to know you also. Favorite? What was your favorite year judging the worlds, and why?
I would say it's my first year because, the excitement of being picked to be on the panel, going there for the first time. And, it's I think, especially for us, it's the whole grand dream, right? Of going to Disney World and going to
Right.
World for the big event that we've all, grown up hearing about. And to be there for the first time, it was very exciting for me. I was fortunate in that sense because a lot of judges couldn't make it that year. The volcano just screwed up so many flights. So I got to do additional things that others didn't get to do. Like now it's very clear, like this is your job and this is your job. So like the second year when I went, I had to adapt to, you mean so I don't do this year? You mean you're not doing this again this year? Because we doubled up, like, with presenting the prizes, and we got to do other things. And because there are so few people, there are certain luxuries where they let us get away with things, or they took us to places. So the first year was cool. And trust me, if you've grown up being a Disney baby your whole life, the first time you step in the Magic Kingdom and you see that great big castle, you're like, I'm here!
Yep, it's happened to everyone, I
Yeah.
guess. Evan, you have one more?
Yeah, sure. Since we're talking about Disney, this is not a this or that, but what would be your go-to ride if you're in Disney World? What would be the first ride that would come into your mind, and then that would be the first one you'd go to?
Oh, usually the first one I make sure I head to is, I think it's the Mount Everest one in Animal Kingdom, because that's the one where, I love the Animal Kingdom. That's my favorite park. So if I pick, like, as much as I love the Magic Kingdom and see everything and go to all, but I'm an animal lover, and because I have also written books on animals. So to me, the first thing is, if I could only pick one park, I would just run the Animal Kingdom, and I go on safari. I see everything, and that ride's actually quite fun because you go in, and it's not just a normal roller coaster. You go in, and then there's one part where you go up, and then it hits a dead end because it's like the track is broken. And you're going backwards. I'm like, yes, and it goes to dark and all this other thing. I mean, there's so many, like, the ones, the space, or whatever it is. I can't remember right now. It's just, I have a lot of favorite rides, but they're all different in so many ways. But that's one ride. Like, if I had to go to the Animal Kingdom and there was only one ride I could queue up for, I would go for that, because the rest are just, normal.
Mm. Anya, meron ka pa, or I have pa?
That's me. I threw all my this or that already.
Okay. Bev,
So
final
lightweight,
question. Bev, final question. Besides the judging and the when you come over to the Philippines, besides the cheerleading and the judging, what do you most look forward to doing?
I know you're trying to say that you know you're trying to force me to say that I like shopping at the S&M
No, no,
mall
no,
or something.
no, no. More food, more food. What's your
Food,
favorite food?
you know which food I
I know.
like. Okay,
Say it.
food in two places. One is that buffet that you take us to with the sea grapes and stuff. I love that place because you know,
Okay.
it's got sashimi. I love Japanese food, so it's got
Right.
everything there.
The buffet.
Um,
The buffet.
the buffet is good because that's got a bit of everything.
Yeah.
But the one thing I miss, which is also very hard, like now, is I want my chicharron. I have
Mm.
more chicharron to eat. Okay, over here. We
Oh,
have something similar in one of the supermarkets, but it just doesn't have the spice or the flavor. I mean, they cook it and it's crispy, but it's not as fun because your chicharron has that wonderful lardy section.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, what I was trying to get you to say is your favorite pizza.
Oh, that's sourdough one?
No, I remember you telling me you love shakies.
I do. I grew up eating shakies over here. I do love shakies,
Yeah,
but
but
it's not
shakies
like
is
the
closed
absolute.
there, right? There's no more shakies there or
There's
something.
no shakies. So, like when I go to the Philippines, yeah, Pizza Bianca and Mojo's.
Oh, there.
Like
Ooh,
Shakey's.
I'm hungry now.
Now,
I'm hungry.
we're all hungry.
Yeah.
We're all hungry. Yes, I got pizza downstairs as well.
Oh no.
I think Shaky still delivers at this time.
We
Really?
have Domino's over here. Well,
Yes.
it depends. You see, over here, Domino's has promotions on Tuesdays, like majors, like it's the equivalent of like Taco Tuesday. So like they have really, really personal pan pizzas for normally, which would be like $9 for like three ninety, and a whole bunch of other offers. So I usually just Tuesdays I'll order it, I'll pick it up, and like there's a whole stack of pizzas, and then it just sits in the fridge for the next few days because it doubles up like for breakfast and stuff. But it's
Right.
usually when I'm too, I know I've got a busy week. Like this week was a crazy week, and I don't have time to make anything. So which Ethan has mentioned, yes, I do bake my own stuff, and of course I'd rather bake my own pizza and make my own pizza as well.
Right.
At other times, I'm fortunate. I have a client who is an Italian restaurant, so I do get my pizzas
Ooh.
whenever I need them.
Ah, so good.
Oh, hi, Hugh. This
Oh
was
my god.
journalism
Wow,
days,
when was
my
this?
A-listers. The one person I don't have a picture of because I interviewed him after I left the paper. It was a phone interview, and I wish I had the opportunity. We didn't have Zoom calls those days. That was just not capable, right? But I wish I had a picture with him. Was I interviewed Buzz Aldrin?
Wow.
So, yeah, one of the men to the moon. That's just that was
Amazing.
a very, very, very interesting interview. To speak to someone who was so knowledgeable,
Right.
and it was intimidating. We're usually very casual when we speak to people. With celebrities, it's always we call them by a name. Like with Hugh Jackman, it's Hugh. With Reese Witherspoon, it's Reese. And everybody else. And the sports, geek in me got to meet Darth Maul, so I spoke to Ray Park, and then. But the thing is, to speak to someone like I've always loved my, things about space and astronomy and stuff like that,
Right.
and
Yeah.
always spent so much time memorizing things about the planets. And to finally speak, to the man who went to the moon, that was just that was.
That's something.
But no pictures to prove it. And I've kept the article, so
your
I have proof. I spoke to this man.
Good. Well, Bev, guess we have run out of time. It's 10 o'clock, and we
Yeah, it was a
gotta keep
lot
it.
of fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, thank you for coming on to the show.
You
yeah,
don't mind
and
me rambling on and on.
yeah, there's so many things because I've known Bev for a long time, and then actually we off cam, and every now and then when there's an issue, she's the first one I consult on certain things, and she gives
Because
the
I'm
best
very
advice. Yeah,
brutally honest, and then
yeah, and you
I
can
remember
tell.
when that there was this picture that Ito sent me, and he was like, "Oh, he was proud." It's like I came up with this. What do you think about it? I'm like, everyone's so old in there.
Right. So she's been a good friend, and we can go on because I've known Bev for a while, and I know we can go on with a conversation about
can.
cheer, about life, about everything. There's so much more. We're just it's
Yeah.
just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to these things, but because of the limitation. So I would like to have you say your last word to the community, to the cheer community, to those also watching the replay of this stream, which will be available on Facebook and YouTube, archived
Okay.
by tomorrow. So please, the floor is yours.
Well, I can't give you all the updates, that you hope for from the ICU, because I think they do a pretty good job on their own, putting the information out and sharing what they can. Again, we live in very interesting times right now, and I wish they were less interesting. But it also means that it gives us a chance to adapt and evolve. And one of the things perhaps is something which I've advocated for a long time and, hasn't been completely picked up. And I'm hoping it will be, like with what I've done with the Australian course that's coming up and I mentioned here, is reflective practices, incorporating that into our teaching, because I think that's the way forward for us as, for the cheer community. There has to be a way to still make things go. It's not just about competition, because I think our cheerleaders can be so much more than just the athletes on the floor. We're responsible for growing them as individuals. We influence them. There's so much that we do that shapes them as people. And I think in these kind of times where you see so much turmoil and people being selfish, it's very important that we raise them to be not just responsible, but to be caring and to, learn to adapt and be better people. It's just the times call for it. This is like shake-up time for the world.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone should stay safe, wear your mask, sanitize your hands.
Great. So that's good. And again, on behalf of for myself, thank you. You've been a very good and supportive friend to me personally, and to the by connection to the whole Philippine cheerleading community. One day we'll write a book, and you're going to be included in it, and how you help shaped it. Whether you deny you
Making
did
that up.
yeah, you can deny it. You can deny it. But okay, so thank you very much for coming on. Nice to see you. Regards to your son.
Thank you again for having me. And you guys stay safe. Be careful. Take care of
Yeah.
yourselves.
Of
Oh,
course.
That goes
Evan,
for all of you out there.
you want to say goodbye, and then Anya can close.
Yes, sure. Thank you again, Bev, for sharing your experience and opinions on cheer. For those who stuck with us throughout the episode, thank you so much. Do share the replay available on Facebook and YouTube, and share the great content that we had tonight to your friends and other cheerleaders as well. And I will see you next week.
Yes, and again, thank you, Bev, for being our guest tonight. I don't know why it took us 4 seasons before we had to invite you here on the show,
Go
but
that man.
yeah, I think that's gonna be a long discussion afterwards. But it was the discussion was so insightful, and I really hope that a lot of the coaches and the cheerleaders and dancers here in the Philippines would get to watch and listen to this discussion we just had. 2 hours is not enough, so hopefully we can have you back on this show soon. And of course, to everybody who like what Coach Evan said, stuck with us for the whole 2 hours, thank you. And we'll see you next Friday. Of course, don't forget to follow us on facebook.com/National Cheerleading Championships and at NCC Philippines on Instagram. And of course, don't forget to send us your Pep Warp Challenge so that we could feature that next Friday at Pep Talk next week. That's it for now. Happy Friday, everybody. Again, stay safe. Like what Bev said, sanitize your hands and wear your masks. Good night. Bye.
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 in your school, you don't really realize how much of an impact cheerleading has because you're there, you're with your own team. But when you go to NCC and you see that it's such a big thing.
When you say national cheerleading competition, it's the biggest and the most prestigious cheerleading competition here in the Philippines. So yeah, we get nervous and yeah, we get excited as well.
If you want to win this competition, you have to practice hard.
I follow what I love to do.
We feel that whatever place we earn, it will just be given to us by God if we pull off our routine perfectly. Cheerleading should really be considered a sport if gymnastics is, because we dance, we tumble, and it's not easy lifting people and tossing people and making it seem effortless.
We have almost everyday training and we also had separate training for weights. I think we're really prepared. We've been working so hard for this.
I think it's really great that the NCC have grown through the years.
There's nothing like the National Cheerleading Championships in the entirety of the Philippines. It's an event that every cheerleader looks forward to every year.
It's like this is the pinnacle of my whole 7 years that I've been doing cheerleading.